Have you ever felt so lost that you believed you could never return? In the stillness of night, when our choices echo the loudest, there are moments we wish we could erase. Moments of pride, rebellion, or desperation. Moments that lead us far from the place we once called home. The story of the prodigal son is not just a tale from ancient times. It is a mirror held up to every soul that has wandered, fallen, and longed for redemption. Long ago, in a quiet countryside, lived a wealthy and compassionate father with two sons. The younger one, restless and hungry for independence, stared at the fields and vineyards with growing discontent. The safety of home had become a cage in his eyes. His dreams were louder than tradition, and his pride stronger than patience. One morning, with determination burning in his chest, he approached his father. His heart pounded, not from fear but ambition. "Father," he said firmly, "give me my share of the inheritance now." The words dropped like stones. In their culture, such a request was unthinkable, almost as if wishing the father dead. The older brother froze in disbelief, while the servants lowered their eyes in shame. Yet the father did not speak harshly. No anger, no judgment, only silence filled with pain. He looked into his son's eyes and saw more than rebellion. He saw a soul searching for something it could not yet name, and with a heavy heart, he granted the request. With a pouch full of coins and a heart full of confidence, the younger son stepped beyond the gates of his father's land. The sun reflected on the road ahead like a promise of glory. He didn't look back, not even once, afraid that a final glance might weaken his resolve. The world beyond home was louder, brighter, and wilder than he had ever imagined. Markets overflowed with music and laughter, the scent of roasted meat mixed with wine and spice. He made friends quickly, friends who adored his generosity but never asked about his soul. To them, he was not a son of a wise father. He was a walking fortune. Nights turned into festivals. Gold spilled like water from his hands. He bought entertainment, pleasure, and the illusion of belonging. Every toast to freedom silenced the small voice within him that whispered of home and love and truth. But with every passing day, his purse grew lighter. The bright faces around him were not bound by loyalty, only by convenience. The laughter faded when the wine thinned, and his name, once greeted with applause, was soon forgotten in the noise of new distractions. Still, he pretended not to notice. Pride is a powerful mask, one that hides the cracks until it finally shatters. The journey he believed would make him free was slowly becoming a road to ruin. The day his last coin slipped from his hand, the world changed. The music stopped. The markets that once overflowed with laughter now felt cold and distant. The so-called friends who had praised him disappeared like smoke in the wind. Not a single face remained, not one voice called his name. As fate would have it, a severe famine struck the land. What was already difficult became unbearable. The once confident traveler, who had lived like a king in a foreign land, now searched for scraps in alleyways. Hunger is a great revealer. It shows us not only our emptiness, but the truth of who we trusted. He went from door to door begging for work. Most turned him away with disgust. His clothes, once fine, were now torn and stained. His eyes, once bold, were dimmed with exhaustion. Finally, a local farmer took pity, or perhaps just saw an opportunity for cheap labor, and sent him to the fields to feed pigs. For a Jewish man, this was the lowest humiliation imaginable. Pigs were unclean animals, forbidden by his faith. Yet here he was, knee-deep in mud, surrounded by creatures that grunted and devoured without care. He watched them eat the pods thrown into the trough and felt a desperation so deep, he longed to eat the food meant for them. No one offered him even that. His dreams had led him far from home, but not to freedom. They had led him to hunger, shame, and silence. One cold morning, as the wind scraped across the barren fields, he sat alone beside the trough. His hands trembled from hunger. His skin clung to his bones. The mud beneath him had dried and cracked like the life he once boasted about. For the first time in a long while, the noise inside him went quiet. In that silence, a memory stirred, his father's house. Not the wealth, not the fields, but the way the servants were treated with dignity. They had bread. They had shelter. They had a place. A whisper rose in his heart, honest and painful. What have I become? He lowered his face into his hands as tears mixed with dust. Pride no longer had strength to argue. His rebellion had not given him identity. It had stripped him of it. The weight of his choices pressed on him, but something new also began to rise. Hope. I will go back, he said to himself, voice barely audible, but not as a son. I am no longer worthy of that. I will ask to be a servant. At least there, I will not starve. The decision did not erase his shame, but it gave him direction. And when a lost soul turns toward home, even from the farthest distance, Grace begins to move. He stood up, weak but determined, and took his first steps back toward the father he had wounded. The road home was not the same road he had taken when he left. His steps were slow, each one echoing with memory and regret. The dust that once felt like adventure now clung to him like evidence of failure. Every mile whispered what he already believed: "You are unworthy." He rehearsed his words as he walked over and over. "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants." Each repetition felt like both a wound and a lifeline. With every village he passed, shame tugged at him. What if word had already returned home? What if his brother despised him? What if his father refused to see him at all? But hunger, humility, and the faint memory of love were stronger than fear. His clothes hung from his body, tattered and faded. His once strong frame had withered. His hair was unkempt, his feet blistered. Yet somewhere ahead, beyond the hills and fields, was the home he had abandoned. And unknown to him, on that very same horizon, a pair of watchful eyes had never stopped looking. Even before the son could see the house, the father had seen the shape of his boy in the distance, thin, broken, but alive. Hope, long buried in heartbreak, began to rise like dawn. Each morning since his son had left, the father would walk to the edge of his land and look toward the horizon. Servants whispered that he should forget, that time would heal the wound. But a father's love does not measure in distance or silence. It waits, it hopes. It endures. On this day, as the wind stirred the trees and the fields shimmered in sunlight, he saw a lone figure far off. At first it was only a shadow, thin, slow, unfamiliar. But love recognizes even what time has changed. His heart leapt. Before anyone could speak, he began to run. Not walk with dignity, not wait with guarded pride, run. His robes shook around him. His sandals struck the earth in long strides. The servants gasped. Men of honor did not run in public, but love is not concerned with dignity. It is concerned with restoration. The son, still far away, saw movement but could not believe it. Was he running toward him or past him? He felt his knees weaken. He tried to speak his rehearsed confession, but the words tangled in his throat. The father reached him and, without hesitation, threw his arms around his son. He held him tight, not gently, not cautiously, but with the force of years of longing. The smell of dirt and sweat did not matter. The shame did not matter. The past did not matter. What was lost had been found. The son tried to speak, his voice trembling as he began his confession. "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But before he could finish, the father cupped his face with trembling hands. His eyes were not filled with disappointment, but with tears of overwhelming relief. The son expected judgment. Instead, he found embrace. The father called out to his servants, his voice breaking with joy. "Quick! Bring the best robe and put it on him. Place a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet." Each item was more than a gift. They were symbols. The robe meant honor restored. The ring meant authority returned. The sandals meant he was no servant, but a son once again. The crowd gathered, astonished. Some whispered, unable to understand such mercy. But the father did not care about the opinions of onlookers. His child had come back from the edge of destruction, and love did not pause to negotiate justice when redemption was at hand. "Prepare the fattened calf," he commanded. "Tonight we celebrate, for my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." Music and preparation filled the home. What had begun in despair was now turning into a feast of restoration, and in the midst of it all, the son stood in silence, wrapped in grace he never expected to touch again. While the house filled with laughter and music, the older brother was out in the fields, working as he always had. He heard the distant sound of celebration and paused, confused. As he drew closer, the rhythm of drums and voices grew louder. Something unusual was happening. A servant hurried by, carrying baskets of bread and wine. "What is going on?" the older brother demanded. The servant smiled. Your brother has returned. Your father has killed the fattened calf. He's safe and home again. The word struck like a blow. The older brother's jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists. He had stayed. He had obeyed. He had honored his father every day without complaint. And yet, there had never been a feast for him. Bitterness rose like a storm within him. He refused to step inside. When his father heard and came out to meet him, the son's resentment spilled over. All these years I've served you, he said, voice hard and wounded, and I never disobeyed. Yet you never gave me even a young goat to celebrate with my friends. But when he comes back, the one who wasted your wealth, you throw a feast? The father listened, sorrow touching his expression. The pain of one child restored had stirred the hidden hurt in another. This was not just a moment of return, it was a moment of revelation. The father stepped closer to his eldest son, his voice gentle but firm. My son, he said softly, you are always with me and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because your brother was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. The older brother looked away, wrestling with the weight of those words. He had lived in the father's house, but not in the father's heart. His obedience had been steady, but his compassion had withered in silence. While he never left physically, part of him had been distant all along. Inside the home, the music swelled, torches flickered, and joy danced in every corner. Servants laid the feast before the guests, while the younger son sat at the table, still overwhelmed, still stunned, barely able to lift his eyes. He could feel the ring on his finger. He could feel the warmth of the robe around his shoulders. But more than anything, he could feel the weight of forgiveness settling into his soul like healing rain. The father stood between both sons, not choosing one over the other, but inviting both to understand the heart of true love. It is not earned, it is given. And in that moment, the celebration was not just for the one who returned, but also for the one who still needed to come home in spirit. The story of the prodigal son does not end with a perfect resolution. It ends with an invitation to see ourselves in every character. We are the younger son when we chase desires that leave us empty, when our choices lead us into loneliness and disgrace. Yet even there, grace whispers, "Come home." We are the older son when resentment blinds us to mercy, when we forget that love is not a reward for performance but a gift from the Father's heart. But above all, we are reminded of who the Father is, patient, watching, running toward us even when we carry the stench of our mistakes. He does not wait for us to clean ourselves first. He meets us on the road, covers us with honor, and restores our identity before we can finish our apology. God's love is not fragile. It is not delayed by distance or damaged by rebellion. It is unfailing, pursuing us through shame, famine, and pride, waiting for the moment our hearts turn back. And when they do, heaven does not whisper, it rejoices. So whether you are lost in a far country or standing outside the celebration with arms folded, the invitation remains the same. Come home. There is a place for you at the table,